Whenever I get near the oven in my kitchen, I have to wear these. That's because my oven gets to be about 400 to 500 degrees Fahrenheit, which can cause serious burns. Well, 3 men in the Bible faced an oven even hotter than that one, and they didn't have oven mitts to protect them. They did have something else, however, and that something ended up saving them from certain death. The ovens in our kitchens get to be about 500 degrees, but if you go to a pizza restaurant, those ovens are even hotter at about 700 to 800 degrees. And pottery kilns, which is another way to say a pottery oven, those get to be about 2,000 to 2,400 degrees. Wow! At that point, oven mitts won't do you any good. And glass ovens, they get to be about 3,000 degrees. Well, we don't know how hot the oven was that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego faced, but we do know it was hot enough to burn the servants who came near it. These 3 Jewish men had a very difficult decision to make. Would they bow down to the golden statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had made? Or would they obey their God who said they should never worship or bow down to other gods and images? If they chose to obey their God, King Nebuchadnezzar was going to throw them into a fiery hot furnace. Well, let me ask you, what would you do if you were faced with that decision? Would you choose to obey God, or would you choose to protect yourself? Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego chose to obey God. Long before this, they had made the decision that they were always going to honor God and obey His commandments. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "We will not serve your gods or the image of gold you have set up." Can you hear the determination in their voices? They may have been afraid of that furnace, but they weren't going to back down on their decision to obey God. Here's a pop quiz. What 2 commandments from the 10 commandments were these men obeying? Number 1 and number 2. You shall have no other gods before me, and you shall not make idols and bow down and worship them. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were very brave, weren't they? We look at this moment where they stand up to King Nebuchadnezzar and they say they're going to obey their God, and we think, wow, what a heroic moment. But really, these men had made lots of little decisions along the way, little heroic choices all through their lives to follow God. When they first came to Babylon, they chose not to eat the king's food. And like their friend Daniel, they spent time in prayer every day. They also didn't follow the culture of their day, which said that they should bow down and worship other idols. So they had made lots of little decisions, which led to this one big decision. And that's a principle we can learn from their lives. If you're not making little daily decisions to obey and honor God, you're not going to be ready to make a big, costly decision. Well, what are some day-to-day decisions of obedience that you could make? Well, let's think back to the 10 Commandments. One of them is to honor your father and your mother. That means to obey and respect them. Another is to tell the truth and not steal. Also, the Bible tells us we should confess our wrongdoing. So when we do something wrong, we should go to God and tell that to Him, and also go to the person that we wronged. And finally, another thing the Bible tells us to do is to turn away from evil. There's plenty of evil on television and internet, and if you ever run across things that you know wouldn't please God, that's the time to turn it off. Because Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had made little daily decisions to obey God, they were ready to do it again when something big and major was asked of them. They had made obedience a habit. And because of that, these men experienced the very presence of God in the furnace with them. And King Nebuchadnezzar got to see it with his own eyes. Because of this, he made a new law in the land that said that everyone should respect the Jewish God. And finally, he elevated these 3 men to new positions of authority. So many good things came out of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's decision to obey God. You may not ever face the threat of being thrown into a fiery furnace, but you will face many times in your life when you have to choose between God and yourself, between what He wants you to do and what you want to do. God notices when we choose the right way. He protects those who honor and obey Him, and that's a much better protection than oven mitts. See you next time.